At long last, we have protections for sexual orientation and gender identity in so many different areas that we never did before. And it is a great feeling, let me say. So let me talk about a few things that this opinion means. No longer will businesses, employers, retailers, educational institutions, landlords, realtors, or others be permitted to discriminate against a person in Michigan based on their sexual orientation or their gender identity. What does this mean for LGBTQ people in this state? Well, it means no longer having your state government be permitted to view you as a second-class citizen. It means better opportunities for jobs, knowing that you can live wherever you can afford to, not having to worry about a diner or a coffee shop say we won't serve you here, or a rideshare service say, I won't drive you in my car. I mean, it means respect. It means equal dignity under the law. No more, no less. Here's what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean fewer rights for anyone else. And as the saying goes, legal protections and rights, it's not a pie. Just because someone else becomes protected under the law doesn't mean anyone else loses anything. And let me address quickly the spate of bills that have been proposed recently that demonize and dehumanize LGBTQ people and elected officials who refer to us as groomers or imply that learning about LGBTQ people is somehow dangerous to children. Nothing can be further from the truth. Both anecdotally, statistically, we know that that's not true. And there is a reason why those who disparage this community are unable to point to even a single case of a trans person, say, assaulting a child, and it's because they can't find one. Now, in 2016, the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office and I conducted a comprehensive review of all the child sexual assault cases handled by Wayne County over a period of 13 years. And not one case were they able to find that involved a trans person assaulting a child, let me say. And so what does this mean, though? This case now, what does legal acceptance of the LGBTQ community mean? Well, what does it bring? It brings tolerance. It brings an understanding that we're all different, and it brings dignity for the nearly 500,000 people who identify as LGBTQ who live here in the state of Michigan. And it also will lead, I think, to fewer hate crimes committed against the community, one of the biggest targets of bias-related crimes. And it's good for the economy of Michigan. There's a reason why the Michigan Chamber of Commerce and local chambers around the state and many of Michigan's largest employers supported this. And they did so because it helps Michigan retain its best and brightest. And it allows us to recruit talent from outside the state. It brings us more tourists. It helps LGBTQ people perform their very best in the workplace, knowing that they can focus on their work instead of obsessing over remaining closeted, so they don't have to worry about getting fired or being denied a promotion. So I just want to quickly address, like, where do we go from here? Where do we go now? Are we done? We're not, unfortunately. And obviously we're facing some uncertain times, especially in view of the Dobbs decision and the concurrence by Justice Thomas. And, remembering that courts can change, right? The concept, the principle of stare decisis doesn't seemingly apply any longer. And so at any time, it means that when the members of a court change, so could the opinions of that court. And that is why it's more important now than ever that we specifically include classes like, sexual orientation and gender identity into all of our state laws and all of our state protections. Because we don't want to have to worry in Michigan about whether or not a different court at some point will come to a different conclusion. But for now, obviously, I just would like to celebrate this incredible victory that so many of us in the state have worked for such a long time and have longed for, and just how meaningful this is going to be to so many people in the state of Michigan. And I am so proud to have argued this case. When I ran for office, it was in large part because I didn't like the way the Department of Attorney General was handling these matters. And I thought that you needed to have an Attorney General that protected all of the people in this state, not just some of the people. So it's not lost upon me that, today's my anniversary. It's my 7th anniversary. And I fought very hard so that people in the state of Michigan and around the country would have the right to marry. And now, because of this case, they'll have the right to marry at the venue of their choosing, which is something, of course, that the individuals in this case were denied the ability to do. So I'm super excited. And I know you already have questions, and I've kind of talked for a long time. I see also that Congressional Representative Haley Stevens is on as well. Hi, Haley. Anyway, I want to have the opportunity to have a few people speak in regard to some of the issues I brought up. And so I know that some of the reporters have questions, but I'd like to throw this now to Senator Moss.
Thank you, Attorney General. We've been friends for 8 years, and this has been the crux of our work for the last 8 years.
You were at my wedding, Denise. Sorry, I've always wanted to say that.
That's right. That's right. And I was. I did celebrate with you 7 years ago. And now here we are being able to celebrate this victory together. This is a victory in the Michigan Supreme Court that affirms what LGBTQ Michiganders already knew, that our lives here are worthy. And that our work here in the state of Michigan provides value. And now today, when we are faced with discrimination, we can seek justice. Too many people in Michigan have suffered hardships up until this decision. They've been fired, they've been evicted, they've been denied housing, they've been denied services publicly available to other people solely due to their sexual orientation and gender identity. And this ruling, more than 40 years in the making, is owed to those who bravely fought against harassment and ridicule to be recognized in the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. And I have to continue to give this well-deserved shout out to our Attorney General, Dana Nessel, Michigan's first out statewide elected official who personally argued this case herself before the court. Our community has never asked for anything more than what any other community has, but we would never accept anything less than equal protection under the law. And I want to pause right there because for the 8 years that I've served in the legislature, I've been the one that's been shepherding this legislation forward to recognize LGBTQ rights. First with former State Representative John Hoadley, and now with State Rep Lori Pohutsky. And we have been told time and time again by those who have blocked our legislative efforts to continue this action on LGBTQ equality that LGBTQ discrimination is contrived. It doesn't happen. It's not real. And there was a former Republican Speaker of the House who said, well, if discrimination against the LGBTQ community existed, we'd all know about it. And my response to him at the time was, if LGBTQ discrimination isn't unlawful, where are we supposed to report it to? People have suffered in silence with no remedies. And even though we haven't been able to tackle on the full scope of this discrimination here in Michigan over these past several decades, we have tracked a lot of the data as much as we can, which was very useful to me when a Senate colleague recently said that efforts to protect the LGBTQ community wasn't really a policy point. It was just part of the big liberal radical agenda. What a radical agenda it is to keep people in Michigan housed and employed. So earlier this year, I spent a whole week in Senate session reading off claim after claim after claim of discrimination, real people in Michigan facing real discrimination at work, in their housing, and when seeking services, until my time ran out, and then I continued it the next day for a week. These are people who have been kicked out of Michigan's economy, both as consumers and workers, just because of their sexual orientation and gender identity. And that's why there is this economic case. Certainly, there's a moral case to treat people right and to treat people well, but there's this economic case that before today's affirmation of protecting LGBTQ rights, it was holding us back economically in the country. So today, with the Supreme Court behind us, we say no more. This is a moment worthy of celebration, a needed glimmer of light for our LGBTQ community in an otherwise dark and uncertain time. And it is evidence that there is a path forward toward equality and acceptance in the face of too much hatred and division. And we have to stay pointed forward, as the Attorney General said, to enshrine this into law and to protect other rights that may come under attack. And our work is not yet done, but this is really a boost forward for our movement. And I'm so pleased about it. It's been the crux of our work legislatively. And I'm so glad to be celebrating with you today, Attorney General. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Senator Moss. Rep. Weiss, do you have a few words?
Yeah, sure. I will be brief. Thank you. I was asked to speak because originally we were going to be at affirmations, which I'm glad we're doing this. And the most important thing is that the decision came down. It would have been awesome to do it at affirmations in Ferndale, but we're with them in spirit. But I want to just start by thanking you, Attorney General Nessel, and wishing you a happy anniversary, and what an anniversary gift this decision is. And hopefully you can go and have a nice anniversary after this press conference is over. But thank you for bringing this case before the Supreme Court, for arguing this case, and for proving definitively that the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act does indeed protect all individuals based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. This has been something, just like Senator Moss has said, and spoke so passionately about, that we here, myself and my colleagues, and a few other colleagues have jumped on since they were introduced. So also Rep. Koopa, Rep. Hood, and Rep. Rogers are on here now, as well as the other colleagues who are on here, that we fought really hard to try to codify into law in the legislature. Senator Moss has led that charge in the Senate, as he said, and my colleague Lori Pahutsky has led that charge in the State House. But unfortunately, in a Republican-controlled legislature, we have no chance of expanding, enhancing, or even clarifying LGBTQIA rights. In fact, Republicans have actively been working to strip away those rights. And just a few months ago, they introduced a school aid budget in the House that would have included anti-trans language that targeted trans children, targeting one of the most vulnerable groups of kids in our state as a way to score political points. All of the legislative members on this call, and the rest, and many others, and Governor Whitmer fought hard against that language. And thankfully, it was not included in the final budget that we passed at the end of June. But we know that this fight is not over, and we know that more of this is coming. They're going to continue to try to roll back rights for the LGBTQIA community, for women, for people of color, for immigrants, and quite frankly, for anyone who isn't a cisgender white Christian male. So even though today is definitely very much a celebration, I also just want to remind people too that there is a call to action, because if there's anything that the Supreme Court has taught us, it's that these rights are incredibly fragile. And that there's something that they are something that we have to continue to protect and to uphold. So I think it's very important that we remind people that we have elections coming up this Tuesday and on November 8th. because we need a pro-equality majority in the legislature so that we can finally codify this into law. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Regina. Really appreciate that. I'm very interested to know what our federal partners, though, are going to be doing to protect us in Washington, D.C. And so if we could hear from Congresswoman Haley Stevens right now. I know you're in the car, but if you're able to.
But always pleased to join a press conference. And allow me to say this, Attorney General, congratulations. And thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being a trailblazer. I truly have the chills saying that to you right now, because watching you as someone who has led our state through some of the most difficult and tumultuous times in recent history, from a COVID-19 pandemic to an election that led to conspiracy theories and attacks on our very democracy, to being a trailblazer for LGBTQ rights, who went before our state Supreme Court to work to enshrine true equality for all into our state's law, has just been remarkable. And the text and the outreach and the outpouring that I am getting right now from members of the LGBTQ community and those of us who are allies of the community is overwhelming. Tears of joy and celebration, because Senator Moss said it right, that we have been waiting and we have been pushing to have anti-discrimination protections into place and in place for us. And you asked me about federal protections. Well, Attorney General, we have seen with the recent Dobbs decision, stripping away women's reproductive rights, the chill that is running up everyone's spine about what this means for marriage equality in this country, something that yet again, you have been a trailblazer on, Madam Attorney General, something that you took all the way to the US Supreme Court to get done, which was to make sure that we had marriage equality, regardless of sexual orientation in this nation. And we had a Supreme Court ruling on that not too long ago. But now we've seen where the Supreme Court is willing to take things. So one, in the House of Representatives, we voted on marriage equality legislation. We didn't have too many from the other side of the aisle join us, not too many at all, unfortunately. But we passed that through the House of Representatives and have sent it to the Senate. As long as I have been in the Congress, I have been a member of the Equality Caucus. I have been participating in the passage of legislation to federally strip away what has been taking place with discrimination in this country. And Moss said it right. Anyone can go forward and participate in discrimination, and there's nowhere to go. There's no enforcement. If you have Attorney General Nessel, you're doing all right. You're maybe doing all right, but still there's nowhere to go. And that's what the meaning of this state Supreme Court case means. But we have got to pass the Equality Act through which has already passed the House. It's got to pass the Senate, and we've got to make this the law of the land. And so as the representative for Michigan's 11th district, this is a fiery part of my charge in the Congress, which is seeing that get done. We just recognized and celebrated, because yes, there is joy and there is celebration in Pride Month, right? That is shutting out the noise, that is shutting out the hate, that love will be louder than hate in this country. And that is what Pride Month means. And that is what this moment means with this court case that you led us through, Madam Attorney General. And so on behalf of the House of Representatives and the district that I represent, that proudly includes you, I salute you, I thank you, and I join you in the commitment that I will always have the back of our LGBTQ community in the Congress, and I will not stop until we pass the Equality Act into law. So thank you, and congratulations again.
Thank you, Representative Stevens. I didn't make her say any of those things, just so you know. You know what? I'd love to hear from our Well, it was going to be our county executive when I was in Wayne County. I'm coming to you from when I was in Oakland. Now I'm coming to you from Wayne. But Dave, do you have anything you want to say? You got to unmute yourself, though.
Oh, I thought you guys did that for me. God, is that such a 2022 thing to say? I will be brief, but I'm gonna. I can't have, because you guys are all very articulated and you said some, exactly what I'm feeling. I'm so excited today. I'm just thrilled. I'm also the oldest person in this group of people who have spoke. And so I can't help but think of the long road that we've traveled, how long overdue these protections are, and how many people along the way have fought for them. And it should go without saying that everyone, without exception, deserves full and equal protections against discrimination in our state. But that has not been the case until today. 2003, when I was a county commissioner, I introduced a resolution to protect LGBTQ people in Oakland County, and Brooks Patterson's administration and the Republicans back then, I couldn't get a single vote. We've come a long way. And so when I think about that road, and there's a couple of people who come to mind. One of my heroes is Harvey Milk, the former supervisor in San Francisco. And Harvey Milk said, one of the most important things we can do to advance full equality for everyone in this country is to come out. That it's harder to discriminate against someone when you stand up for yourself, you are authentic about yourself, and you put yourself out there. And I just want to say, and then there's a second group of people that I've been thinking about a lot in the last couple hours, and that is the primarily trans women that were at Stonewall and stood up and in a time when it was really dangerous to do so, and stood up for those rights. That's, for those of you who are not familiar, that's kind of the beginning of the modern LGBTQ civil rights movement. And I just want to say that I feel like in Michigan now, not to be too corny, but we have our Harvey Milk, we have our Stonewall rioters in Dana Nessel, our Attorney General. You have stood up on marriage equality, and now Elliott-Larsen, and in so many other ways. And it doesn't happen if you're not brave enough and thick-skinned enough to take the slings and arrows that inevitably come from these kind of battles. But as an openly gay man, and on behalf of not only just the LGBT community, but all residents of Michigan who care about fairness, I want to thank you. Because to your point, Dana, this notion that these are somehow special rights, remember that in Elliott-Larsen, we offer legal protections based on weight and height, and a myriad of factors. The glaring exception was sexual orientation, and today that is no longer the case. So thank you, AG, for your leadership, and it's a great day.
Well, thank you, Executive Coulter. As much as I'd love to have everybody who's on here say wonderful things about me, even though that was not a prerequisite for appearing on here, I know that the press has some questions. So before they drop off, perhaps Amber, maybe we should start taking some questions from them.
Sure, I'm going to start with Lena Stebbins and then go to Beth LeBlanc.
Hi, AG. You touched on my question a bit earlier, but I was wondering, since these protections are not codified in law, whether there is some concern whether there's a risk that a GOP majority court in the future could potentially overturn this.
Yes, there is definitely that risk. And, time was, you would have a decision, and no matter how controversial that decision was, it was respected. And courts, from a historical standpoint, understood that in order not to politicize a court, you stayed with the ruling for many, many years. And that doesn't really seem to be the case any longer. And so here's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about Obergefell, right? I mean, I am very worried. That was a 5-4 decision. And obviously we have several people who were a part of that majority that are gone now. And I think we have a majority of the United States Supreme Court that would be willing to reverse Obergefell. What will happen in Michigan if that occurs? No more marriage equality. I can tell you that. We have both a constitutional amendment and a statute on the books. So what would be required is this. We couldn't, yes, absolutely, it's important that we have pro-equality minded people who are running the House and the Senate and in the governor's office. But they're not going to be able to by themselves repeal a constitutional amendment. So we're going to have a new constitutional amendment that will specifically repeal that. And I think that, no time like the present, we should get, ready for this for 2024, because I do see it on the horizon and we have to be proactive about it. So I think that needs to happen. But, I think that it's going to go further than that, right? We have had a number of people talk about, Lawrence v. Texas, the sodomy laws. And it's important to remember that the sodomy laws are still on the books in Michigan. And remember, they apply equally, not just to same-sex couples, but also to opposite-sex couples. It's a 15-year felony, still on the books, never repealed. We need to have people in the state legislature that will repeal that horrific law so that it's no longer in existence and cannot be enforced by any prosecutor in the state in the event that Lawrence is overturned. I mean, we've heard the same thing about Griswold v. Connecticut. I mean, we've heard so many seminal cases talked about now as cases that might be reversed, and what that will mean for us. Just such a complete change in society in the event that occurs. So absolutely, we need to make sure that we have these laws codified, not just from a court of law, but into our statutes and really into our state constitution. And moreover, as Representative Stevens talked about, we really need to have federal action on this, because of course we know that federal laws will supersede whatever we do here in Michigan, even our Michigan Constitution. And so if we get the Equality Act passed, and if the Senate should take up the most recent effort to codify marriage equality into federal statutes, which of course would be signed by President Biden, then we will have those full protections. But until or unless those things happen, yeah, I mean, every day I am fearful that we'll see these seminal and important cases overturned. And as I have said many times, I mean, the thought of, every anniversary I celebrate, I worry that it's going to be my last. And as I have said many times, you'll pry this ring off of my dead gay hand because I am retaining a lot of water. And I've gained about 10 pounds since I got married, if not more. So it's going to be very difficult. But the fact of the matter is this: I think it's important that people who are listening to this know, if you overturn Obergefell, if you overturn Lawrence, if you overturn these important laws, if it changes in terms of the rights that we just gained today under Elliott-Larsen, no one's life is going to get better, right? This isn't going to help us give our children a better education. It's not going to ensure that that the water we drink won't have toxins, or the air we breathe will be any purer. It's not going to fix our roads. When we discriminate against LGBTQ people, life doesn't get better for anyone else, but it sure does get a hell of a lot worse for the hundreds of thousands of people in the state who identify as LGBTQ and for our family members. And I think that's something that I really want everyone to take to heart. This is a special day because people feel more protected, but no one is losing any rights. And anything you hear to the contrary is just an effort to score points politically, but it's not factually accurate. It's not real. And, discrimination is wrong. I hope that we can just all agree with that premise, because it's true.
Thank you, Attorney General. Beth, I'm going to go to you and then next to Eric Lloyd from 9 and 10.
Hey, thanks, Attorney General, for taking these questions. I know the lawyer for the plaintiffs in this case, David Coleman, has said in the past that essentially if the Supreme Court affirmed sexual orientation was included in the law, then he would be challenging it as a violation of religious freedoms. And I believe that challenge is waiting in the Court of Claims. Are you able to address that at all, or talk about your team's plan to oppose that moving forward?
Well, obviously, everything is predicated on the factual circumstances of the case, right? But I mean, I just want to say this: there have always been religious freedom protection. So, for instance, the couple that was at issue in our case, the same-sex couple that sought to get married at Rouch World and was denied the opportunity to do so, we've always had protections in terms of, religious institutions, right? The Catholic Church would never have to marry that couple, just the same way they wouldn't have to marry anybody actually who wasn't Catholic. And there are many other protections that exist. But this set of circumstances was one in which there was no, religious affinity for this particular venue. And am I concerned about, about future arguments that anyone at any time under any circumstances can just say, well, I have a religious problem with that, and so I think that I should get an exception. I hope that that's not going to be the case. But, everything is predicated on the facts of that particular case. And so we'll have to see what facts are brought forward. I do expect, of course, that there will be further challenges. I think there's a challenge that's before the United States Supreme Court right now. And we'll have to see, what happens in regard to that. But, in the meantime, of course, we're going to celebrate this victory against discrimination. And I hope that people will understand that, historically, when we have these types of cases and we have progress that allows more people to be protected, again, no one's life is going to be any worse for it, but a whole lot of people are going to have their lives get much, much better.
Thank you, Attorney General. Eric, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I had kind of 1.5. I was wondering what the difference, other than just codifying this, if we pass legislation, would there be any difference in the protections, or is it just going to codify the exact same decision that was made by the Supreme Court here? And then also, if it were to be codified, would it protect against any changes that could come from the US Supreme Court in the future?
So, if we were to codify this into, say, Elliott-Larsen, for right now, no, there wouldn't be a difference. But it would protect against another court in another session saying that the word sex does not encapsulate sexual orientation and gender identity, as this court has done. That was the argument before this Supreme Court. And so it would protect against that. In terms of the United States Supreme Court, first of all, they've already sort of spoken on this issue to some extent by in the Bostic opinion, which involved Title VII, but it was virtually the same argument. And remember, that was a case that was decided by it was authored by Neil Gorsuch, a Trump appointee. So, and it was virtually, the same argument that we made before this court, but in terms of the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act. But could the United States Supreme Court, could they impact anything that we do in Michigan? Yes, of course, they're the United States Supreme Court. But if you're looking at cases where the United States Supreme Court says we are not going to read anything into the words sex, and it needs to be expressly written, then of course we need to have this codified. Or if the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, were to say, we don't believe that, say, marriage equality is protected under the Due Process Clause, under the Equal Protection Clause, we don't think that it's a fundamental right, then really it goes back to the state. And if the state has that protection and says that same-sex marriage is protected under Michigan law, then it would remain legal. And if we continue to have these bans on the books, then it would not be legal anymore. So that's why it's so important, again, that we repeal the constitutional amendment, we repeal the statute, and that we have, constitutional or at least statutory protections for same-sex marriage in Michigan, so that you don't have a situation where Obergefell is reversed, and it means that the tens of thousands of happily married couples in Michigan will have their marriages dissolved, and that people won't be able to enter into future marriages. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, AG Nessel, it looks like we've answered all of our questions this evening. Thank you, everybody. Oh, I'm sorry. I see Rachel just raised her hand. Rachel, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, that was a last minute question addition. Yeah, I just wanted to ask AG Nessel, this is happening right ahead of the August and November elections. So I guess just in your opinion, do you think this will impact the election, either kind of taking away urgency for voters or potentially kind of fueling a fire for Democrats as well?
So let me say this, and I think this is why I'm so grateful for the, Voters Not Politicians proposal to ballot proposal that was passed in 2018, and because at long last, we're going to have a legislature that's not gerrymandered. Well, why is that so important? Well, it's because you have, over 70% of Michigan residents that believe that marriage equality should remain legal and the law of the land. You have, I think, closer to 80% of Michigan residents that believe that, a person shouldn't be fired or denied employment or housing or public accommodations and so forth because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. But, for so long, we've been unable to pass any legislation that protects this community, only because we don't have a legislature that properly reflects the values of the people who live in our state. And so I hope that when people go to the polls this November, they'll be thinking about, are they going to be voting for somebody who reflects their values, who believes in equality for all people, which most people in Michigan believe, or are they going to subscribe to the hateful rhetoric that we've seen, quite honestly, from many members of the Republican Party in both the House and the Senate? I think that voters will do the right thing. And I think that voters will want to see these protections stay in place. And, I remain hopeful that in the future, we will keep these protections and they'll just be part of our everyday life. So, I guess that remains to be seen, but, we have a very, very specific difference in parties right now. There's no question. You listen to the gubernatorial candidates for the Republicans and the way that they disparage the community and how they seek to undo any progress that we've made. And then you contrast that with Governor Whitmer, who has been a tremendous ally to the community. And the same thing with people who are running for State House and Senate. And very definitely the same thing in my race. I think there's no question at all about the differences between myself and my opponent and where we stand on this issue. So yeah, the voters are going to have a very specific choice. They're not going to have to wonder, well, what party stands for what? It's very, very obvious. And I think at the end of the day, since the vast majority of voters believe in equality and protection for all people, I think that's the way they're going to vote in November.
Thank you very much, Attorney General, and thank you everybody for participating this evening. We appreciate your time, and we're going to be ending the avail now. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.